Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session, Data Governance by Design at IBM. My name is Nipul Chokshi, and I'm the VP of Marketing here at Dun & Bradstreet. McKinsey recently found that digital commerce has experienced 10 years worth of growth in 3 months. It's an undeniable fact that digital transformation has been elevated in importance and urgency on all our agendas. But how do you design data governance so that you can have the data foundation that you need to fuel your digital transformation and maximize impact? I'm excited to be joined by our guest speaker today, Daniel Benoit from IBM, one of D&B's longtime customers. Daniel will be talking about how his team is working at the forefront of establishing a data foundation for growth and revenue for the company. Before we get started, we'll be taking questions throughout the presentation, so please use the chat area below the video section of the screen to submit your questions. And so without further ado, Daniel, why don't you take it away? And if you could start with your role and mission at IBM, that'd be great. Daniel?
Thank you, Nepal. So, as he said, my name is Daniel Benoit. I've been with IBM for 25 years. The past 5 years or so, I've been in our Global Chief Data Office. Actually, one of the founding members when IBM decided that as the company was moving towards a cognitive enterprise and AI solutions, and data needed to be the foundation of that, IBM did establish a Global Chief Data Office. I'm responsible for our governance by design strategy, as well as a third-party data acquisition. So a couple of things I'd like to get started on is, as enterprises are going towards cognitive solutions and making themselves more AI enabled, it became very apparent that data was a key aspect of this. It gets back to the old saying, garbage in, garbage out. If you're going to build a artificial intelligence type of engine, if you're going to enable your enterprise with cognitive solutions, it's based on having solid data. Our approach to that has been, so that describes, once we decide that, we had to describe what our journey was to go and do this enablement. First thing we're going to talk a little bit is about a clear data strategy. Then it's about how do you execute this on an enterprise-wide governance system, having a central source for the data, and then through that, how you build your deep analytical partnerships, both inside and outside the company, and certainly not last but not least, how you scale and develop talent in this area. To go over these topics, we're going to talk about how we made data a corporate asset, how we've addressed silo and change management in doing that, how we're approaching embedding governance and how we actually manage data in the data lake in IBM, the impact that we're seeing from having an AI-enabled enterprise and the data to support that, and some lessons learned. Okay, so as we embarked on creating our data strategy, one of the key components of that is treating data as a corporate asset. One of the reasons the GCO was put in place was to set IBM's data strategy, prioritize data security and trust across the enterprise, and drive the cultural change and large-scale use and adoption of data as an asset and data-driven cognitive enterprise. To do that, we knew we had to make data broadly available. So we had to remove the silos of this data sitting in the legacy systems. We also wanted to remove the complexity. Many of us deal with large enterprise, and the volume of our legacy systems just mean we've got very complex data structures. How do we make it easy for people to find the data? We need to talk about how are we going to deliver this data in a federated model, data centralization, etc. The biggest part, though, is the last bullet point, is how we impact the business. This couldn't just be an academic exercise of building a data lake and hoping that our users would come and that they would see the benefit. So we're very focused on how we deliver value to the company. So to address the change management aspects of this, we developed a data officer council. As I said on the introduction, I belong to the Global Chief Data Office. So we have global responsibility for data management across the corporation. But to really make that work, we've engaged with all of our business units, and they have a data officer themselves. We get together on a monthly basis, discussing key issues facing the company around the use of data, the access of data, the standardization of data. So the team really, they themselves take our message, a consistent message, a collaborative message around data to the company and enable the strategy across their business units. What we've done from a global chief data office standpoint to enable this is work to embed governance into our actual corporate data lake. We brought over 300 of IBM's core systems into our data lake. We have ingested over 1 trillion records, of which we refresh over 1 billion records a week on a regular basis in our data lake. To be able to do that, again, we've embedded governance into our processes, from working with our stakeholders on how we bring their data into the lake so it's done in a consistent fashion, to building search features. I'm sure you can imagine that bringing in data from over 300 systems, again, is a large undertaking and a lot of redundant data as well. But even where it's not redundant, being able to standardize the terms so people can find what they're looking for required us to actually apply our own AI technology and our own cognitive Watson technology to enable users to find the data that they're looking for. We do it through contract management, and we use that in a very generic term. And it gets also related to the underlying area of trust as a service. So we look at contract management, not just like with third-party data, but certainly a contract that you have with your stakeholders, that you're going to use their data appropriately. You're going to, between contract management and customer management, you know how your users are using the data, that they're using it properly, that you, and certainly in customer management, you're monitoring their usage. And again, if you have a billing model, you want to be able to bill back your customers. Now, IBM doesn't do that, but it's within the concepts of what we believe you have to have from a good overall governance standpoint. The last three around doing data as a service, cognition as a service, and application library is about how you kind of bring these things together and wrap it up into a set of services that you can deliver to your customer. So certainly we talked about interactive data onboarding, but at the same time, you've got to deal with the other end of it, which is, okay, people actually want to get access to the data and use the data in their processes. So we deliver a lot of our data out as data as a service through a series of APIs or different visualization models. We also deal with cognition as a service. Enterprises, companies are spending a lot of money and effort into building AI models. And what you want to ensure, just like data, where you don't have competing AI models, like we've been dealing with competing data and business analytics for many years, you want to have a library, a set of approved AI models for the enterprise to use, so that there is, a consistent way that you're going to deliver a model for customer segmentation or customer engagement, so that every team is not having to go out and develop their own model on how to do customer segmentation, for example. And the last one about an application library is kind of the ability to develop a wrapper that talks about everything that we've talked about so far and put it into a single application to your end user. So they don't have to worry about onboarding the data themselves or going through those mechanisms. They don't have to go necessarily search for the data themselves. You've wrapped that together into an overall application for the user. The value this has delivered to IBM even specifically within the Global Chief Data Office, one of the tools that we built as part of our interactive data onboarding was the ability to do metadata generation. What this tool does is it links the technical data to the business terms. As I said, we brought in data from over 300 systems. Those systems represent over 150,000 tables within the system. Being able to search and aggregate that in a mechanism so that we can get from 150,000 individual elements to something that an end user recognizes, we do through the automatic metadata generation. But we've only been able to do that by applying the same rules to our own data that we've asked the rest of the corporation. And in doing that, we've reduced the time it takes to do this linkage between your technical data and the business terms and the business view of the data 90%. This used to take our stakeholders upwards of 4 to 6 weeks on average for an average system to do this linkage. It now gets done under a week. We've calculated that that productivity savings, to the company to the tune of $27 million. Now that's how we're doing it within the GCDO. But of course, we're here to support the overall business. So what's an impact we've had to the actual line business? Well, we've done that, and one of the areas that we've measured is in our technical support area. We brought in over 30 data sets. We've used Watson technology to build the Watson chat technology to be able to answer questions for our users that call and they have technical support questions. By doing that, we've been able to provide them better, cleaner, faster answers. It's enabled our agents to spend more time on the difficult problems where they actually need to have a personal interaction with the customer to answer the questions. And in doing that, we've raised our NPS score 11 points. So by building a central data lake, having governance around that data, having consistent governance processes and managing it, we've been able to, again, bring in, data sources from many different parts of the business. So we weren't even just bringing in, data from the technical team. It brings in product data. It brings in sales data. And again, enabling that through the Watson technology freed up the agents to actually deal with the tougher problems with the customers. What lessons have we learned through the past 4 or 5 years in IBM on that? We've gone through this pretty quickly, but securing enterprise-wide in for a common data strategy is not easy. You're asking people to give up their silos. You're asking people to modify their processes so that they treat data consistently. It's not just data processes. It's actual, functional processes. Maybe you're going to have to process an accounts receivable credit differently so that you're populating data in a consistent fashion so that it will downstream link up with the customer master record. So you're not just talking about changing data policy. Oftentimes you're talking about changing, very fundamental operational processes so that the data is consistent and can be linked up throughout the enterprise. So, but what has that given to the business? As you've seen on the previous slides, from the impact that we've already had, it's enabled faster discovery of data, faster consumption. The projects that I mentioned, we were, again, early on, they took about 6 to 9 months from conception to implementation. But a lot of that was actually because we were going and gathering data for the first time. Now, as we've seen subsequent projects, and we've got that data already in the data lake, the speed to deliver is much faster. And again, business units are not having to go out and gather the same data into their own IWs in the business units. They come to our corporate data lake and they're finding the data that they need. We're also delivering insights that were previously impossible. Many of our areas, we're now building 360 views of data. We built Client 360. We built a Product 360. We're working on a Workforce 360. All based on building a data strategy first that starts with our systems of record that then evolve into the system of insights, which is the corporate data lake. And I do want to say that, again, I've talked a lot about the corporate data lake, but it really is dependent that you take a holistic view and start with your systems of insight. For example, as Nepal said, we've been, a longtime customer of Dun & Bradstreet. So in our customer master system, we early on have actually adopted Dun & Bradstreet as our key to customer data. So now we work to enable any system that deals with customer data needs to have a DUNS number so that as it comes across, we can roll it up using the various keys within Dun & Bradstreet, whether we're talking about a domestic client, a global client, but it all starts in your system of record and, having good master data. And specifically, that's why we use like Dun & Bradstreet in the customer area. You cannot build these 360 views unless you've agreed on what the common keys are across your systems of record. And as I said earlier, it gives us faster end-to-end cycle time. So people are not spending time looking for data, gathering data, ingesting data. It's now available to them in the corporate data lake in a consistent fashion and with consistent access policies, etc. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Nepal.
Awesome. Thanks, Daniel. I thought that was a really great framework and great examples of how you've seen value. Just to summarize for everyone, looked like there were 3 pillars to data governance by design. Number 1, to treat your data as a corporate asset. Number 2, focus on eradicating silos and driving change management. And then number 3, embedding governance across all your functions and business decisions. So great framework indeed. I see several questions coming in through the chat. So let's kick off the Q&A. Awesome. So one of the questions here is really, it kind of asks about your data office council. And what the person wants to know here is, how has it actually changed the view of data management with your stakeholders within IBM?
Great question. It's really brought, the level of discussion around like enterprise data standards. And again, back to that, you can't just build the data lake. We have to go and have, these data officers, go work with their systems of record, make changes there so that it's flowing through the whole process. So it really has kind of focused the need to start at the source systems and manage it through your whole set of process workflows and everything else. It's not something that you can just change, in a bunch of spreadsheets at the end. Right.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point. Another question here is all around. So this particular person, she's asking, they're struggling to secure enterprise-wide buy-in for a common data strategy. What do you have any tips or tricks that someone can use if they're looking to drive that buy-in, particularly across executives?
Yeah, we started really at the senior level. Of course, as IBM was launching into cognitive and artificial intelligence. Sorry about that. One of the great things about working from home during COVID. No, it really helped that we had really, top senior level executives involved in the discussions. Indipal Badari, who's our global chief data office, actually reports to Jim Kavanaugh, who is our CFO and basically our COO. So, these conversations are really being held at the senior levels of the company, and they've come to understand the importance of data and running the operations and driving that message, down into the organization, and really supportive of creating bodies like the Data Officer Council to ensure that this is an ongoing and a living, set of activities in the enterprise, and not just a one-off.
Right. Excellent. And it looks like we're right on time here. There are a lot of other questions, but we promise we will get back to you on a one-on-one basis. Daniel, I just wanted to thank you again for doing this. There are some great frameworks and insights indeed, and really appreciate your time. Thank you. And thanks everyone for attending.